The Institute, episode 1 review. Man, this is a brand new show that just dropped on MGM. They got the first 2 episodes, but I figured let me just start with the first episode, see how I feel about it, see how the people feel about it. So if you end up enjoying this video and my review of this, make sure you hit that like button, because then I could talk about episode 2, and I'll drop that sometime this week. Anyway, so I like this introduction to this character, Luke. He's obviously like a genius. He's like taking this test, and everybody's kind of blown away of how fast he got done the test. Even this girl was like, "How did you do this?" And she was like, "Damn, he just made that shit look so simple." And you know what I'm saying? Somebody even asks him like, do you even like being like this? Or I forget exactly the words that she used, but he was just like, all right, whatever. And then we get introduced to his friend Ralph, and he's really connected to this jersey that he ended up ripping. And then we also get introduced to another character that goes by the name of Tim, but at the first introduction, we don't know exactly what he's doing, but he's hitchhiking. While that's going on, we go back to Luke and we get introduced to him talking to his parents about going to MIT, and his parents are being like, are you sure about that? Because this is a real decision you gotta kind of think about. And that's crazy, he's already thinking about that at the age of, like, I think he said he was like 14, so he's pretty much like a genius, like I said. But little did he know that he was about to get snatched up in the middle of the night. But before we get into that, we see where Tim was going, and he was actually going to this police station because he's looking for a new job. His previous job, he has some troubles and whatnot, but he's definitely he seems to be the character that's going to be helping or figuring things out on the outside about this weird place, because now that we see that Luke is waking up what seems to be his room, but it's not his room. He can clearly tell that it's not. He wakes up in this like facility that looks like a school mixed with like a insane asylum. Then we get introduced to Kalisha, or Shah, and she kind of gives Luke like a kind of a crash course of what's what around here, and very interesting character. But Luke is very smart and intuitive. He picks up on things very quickly. He doesn't really, you know what I'm saying, lose his cool, even though you could tell he is definitely scared, because he's like, I've been kidnapped, but they call it recruiting. It's hilarious, and they're being watched by these 3 characters. Miss Sigby, that's played by Mary Louise Parker's character, and you got the dude, I forget what his name, but he kind of handles the meds, and then you got the security guy. You know what I'm saying? I know these actors' names, but I'm just kind of drawing a blank. But they are like surveilling the situation, just keeping an eye out on Luke. And so now they're pretty much continuously talking. I'm talking about Shah and Luke. You know, she's pretty much telling him how everything works, how everything operates, the whole back half and the front half. They're in the front half, and the people that get rewarded go into the back half. That's kind of a mystery. A lot of kind of lore, like kind of exposition to kind of break down in this episode. So I could see some people getting kind of overwhelmed by the information. It's not a lot. I would say it's a lot, but I could see some people, you know, it's not hard to follow. Some of it is very predictable throughout this first episode, but it's not bad. You know, I'm still really intrigued what's going on at this point. So before Luke meets Miss Sigby, Shah decides to kiss him, which was kind of really odd as an unconsensual kiss, but there was a whole kind of reasoning behind that to kind of keep him in this section of the Institute. So while that's kind of going on, you know, we see Tim on the other side of things, like trying to get used to his co-workers and stuff like that. And I think this blonde chick, it might end up being maybe a love interest, or there might be a lot more to it. Speaking of which, going back to Luke and him meeting Miss Sigsbee, and him still kind of trying to maintain like this kind of tough guy bravado, like trying to not to seem like he's intimidated, like he's scared, but he wants to just kind of keep a calm head. But he learns really quick that, you know, with this woman here, that she's not playing no games with him, breaking down the rules and what to expect, saying like, look, you're gonna get these injections and you're gonna be treated like an adult here. There's no curfew, there's no nothing, like you can walk around, but you have to just follow the rules, do as we say, or you're going to get adult consequences. And we definitely see certain things about that, but you know, she kind of just lets her presence be known and just lets Luke know that, you know, as long as you do what you got to do, you can kind of walk free. But we know that's kind of bullshit, and even Luke kind of sees that as bullshit. The next scene we get of Tim kind of just, you know, walking around, he runs into this old lady that's kind of just homeless, seemingly to be homeless. Seems to be a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, and you know, she tells Tim, like, have you ever, you know, questioned kind of like your reality, or just seen like you have any feelings? That's how they kind of spy on you. There's just a lot of weird shit you got to be aware of. And you know, I think he's gonna not really think too much of it right now, but I think it's definitely setting things up for what's to come later. And then we see old girl that snatched up Luke, and Luke saw her earlier in the elevator, and he got kind of yoked up and thrown back into the elevator before he can even really confront her about it. But she obviously is working for the Institute to kind of snatch up different people, but she's getting a little bit sloppy and a little bit messy, so she's kind of like in their crosshairs. And like I said, there's people kind of driving up to the Institute, and this couple kind of, you know, drives up, and I hope that scene's not for nothing. I would think that that couple kind of has always had a suspicion about that, and they just wanted to get as close as they could, and maybe they'll play into something later down the line, who knows. But I'm just hoping that scene wasn't for nothing. Back at the Institute, you have Luke getting ready to get his pretty much get this like kind of chip thing to kind of track all the different people that are staying there, and he tries to get tough with this guy, and this guy just slaps the fuck out of him. It's just like, look, you sure you want to do this? And you could see that his face was completely red, and now he's got this tracker on her. And then going back to old girl that snatched up Luke, she's out on this date, and this is where I knew things were going to go left. I was like, she's either going to die in the second episode. That's what I was predicted, but then how this kind of plays out was very predictable. I feel like this could have been done better or executed better, you know, but you could kind of tell just based on how they introduced her and whatnot that she wasn't going to stick around too long. So the dots are already kind of being set, where you see a scene of Tim crossing paths with old girl that snatched up Luke. I'm drawing a blank on her name, if they said her name or not. And he might have to come back to that, because where that goes is really interesting. Back at the Institute, you have Shaw getting Luke out of his room to kind of introduce him to everybody else, and they share another kiss, you know what I'm saying? And I like this whole I like their relationship, or just the early stages of it, you know, her kind of explaining her powers, how a lot of these characters either are telepaths, or they can read minds and shit like that. Telepaths, or they can move things with their minds and stuff like that. We see that with a character that goes by the name of George. I'll draw them blank on the other chick's name. We also have Nikki, which he's like seems like the oldest, and they even kind of break down the history of who's been here. The youngest has been 10, the oldest has been 19. So you're getting a lot of information about this place and just different things, which is still cool and intriguing. Then we get to the end of the episode where, like I said, predicted, like, I feel like everybody could see that coming from a mile away, where she's talking to her date and her date ends up being a journalist. And that's what that was the dead giveaway. And I was like, oh yeah, you're dead. She goes on the computer and obviously she got her back turned and she gets smoked, TV turned off. And I'm wondering if we're going to see this chick again. Like, she's pretty much a hit woman, you know what I'm saying? An assassin for the Institute. So really interesting stuff there, even though it was predictable as hell. It kind of just goes to show the stakes in this show. The final scenes we get is with Luke kind of roaming around, going outside, and then kind of crossing paths with Nikki, and Nikki wanting to play chess, and them kind of having a conversation while that's going on. At the same time, you have Miss Sigsbee at her place, and it's right next to the Institute, and you see her cooking and stuff, just having a good time. But she's also burning herself and, you know, branding herself, and you could tell that she's definitely gone through some things here. And the last thing we get is Nikki talking about, you know, wanting to kind of get out of this place. But overall, this was a really solid first episode. I'm definitely looking forward to checking out episode 2 and beyond. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did this first episode do enough to intrigue you? Do you think this can rival From and kind of dethrone that as the #1 show on MGM? But let me know, how did y'all feel about this first episode? Till next time, I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.